All right, we're going to start the Committee on Local Government. Clerk will open the roll so we can take attendance. Okay.
Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Okay, great. I know we've got. Oh, that's right. Senator Hackworth, the invisible man today. So we've got, just for the audience's edification, we've got, I see, 3 patrons that are currently in courts, and another person presenting in courts, and a 4th patron in courts. So we'll see how this flies this morning. But we have our first up, who's not in courts, is our favorite Senator John Cosgrove.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm so grateful not to be in court.
You're right. I just came from there. You should be.
Mr. Chairman, I have Senate Bill 52 for your consideration today. Senate Bill 52 deals solely with utilities, water, gas, electric, that type of thing. Currently, the code says the locality can adopt an ordinance that will provide a pro rata share of these utility costs. And let me give you an example. When a developer comes in and puts in water, sewer, gas, cable, whatever, okay, they bear all those costs. But then when another developer comes in after they have put in all those costs, they tap into those utilities that they have not paid for. So what this bill does, it requires the localities to share a pro rata share of the cost of those utilities for a developer who has tapped into them after they have already been installed. That's pretty much what it does.
Okay. Any questions from the committee for Senator Cosgrove? Is there anybody here to speak in support of Senate Bill 52?
If you're in the Zoom room and would like to speak in favor of this bill, please raise your hand electronically now. There's no one in the Zoom room, Mr. Chair.
Anybody here to speak against Senate Bill 52?
If you're in the Zoom room and would like to speak against this bill, please raise your hand electronically now.
Been moved and second? Oh, I'm sorry.
There does not appear to be anyone in opposition in the Zoom room.
Thank you. Report. It's been moved and properly seconded that Senate Bill 52 be reported. Clerk will open the roll.
Senator Hackworth, how do you vote?
That's why it's our favorite.
Short and to the point. All right.
Mr. Chairman, this is so much better than
Ayes 11, no 0.
All right, Senator Cosgrove, thank you.
Thank you.
And now we're at a standstill. Who's here?
Barker.
Oh, is Barker here? George? Senator Barker, you've got SB 339.
Yes, I do. I'm Senate Bill 339.
I haven't heard a word about it.
What's that? All right. You probably remember that encountered at the metro system in the D.C. area there. And the funding was inadequate to be able to maintain, to continue the meet the capital needs of the system. So what we did was we had put together, on the board of the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments, the only Virginia legislator on that, and we put together a group of people to work on it. We came up with an approach that was providing $500 million a year in terms of funding to help meet the capital needs of the metro system. Leading up into that, the governor had hired a consultant, a former congressman and U.S. Transportation Secretary, who came up with a report, and in putting together that report, one of the things that he recommended was changing the way the board operated. There are 4 parties to the metro system. One is Virginia, second is the District of Columbia, Maryland, and the federal government. So those 4 bodies did a compact and came up with the system. In putting together the proposal on operations, there are 2 members from each of the 4 parties to it and 2 alternate board members. The alternate board members historically had been participating in the operations meetings and sitting on committees and things. But what was recommended by the consultant that we had, that we in effect said only the permanent members, the active members, are the ones that should be participating there. And so the alternate members are still alternate members, but rarely get to participate. Usually just is only in terms of in situations where they're doing things in lieu of one of the regular members there. Neither D.C. nor Maryland had the same. They did not participate with us in the consultant report that was done, and neither of them were in favor of moving in that direction. But I said it's in our report. We're going to put it in there and see how it goes. I have continued to meet with elected officials from D.C. and Maryland over the last 4 years, sort of to keep monitoring on things, and we've been very pleased with some of the progress that's been made, although we do now have another challenge in that the CEO just announced his resignation coming up in a few months. So there are a few things that we'll have to continue to work on. Ridership is down, but that's pretty much the case all across the country on things. One of the things that both Maryland and D.C. advocated for was eliminating that provision that we put into our law back in 2018. So that's what this bill does, is it repeals that provision, because what the provision really says is if the Metro Board operated with the alternate members basically in any other capacity, in any formal capacity, there would be a 20% reduction in Virginia's contribution to the $500 million.
Senator Barr, can I interrupt you for a second?
Certainly.
Has transportation typically dealt with this issue?
Yeah, I guess it did go to transportation first and then went to finance in 2018.
I hate to steal your thunder, but I mean, if they've dealt with this historically, I don't know why. I think so.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Easton.
Actually, in 2018, this was under Senator Carrico, who was the chairman of transportation at the time. I remember this bill. But I would suggest we refer this to transportation, and it gets heard there.
Yeah, Senator Barker, I hate to waste your time, but if they've got a history with having heard this and immersed in this subject matter,
okay,
it sounds like it's a little bit outside of our scope. So we have go ahead.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, is the motion made to move to transportation? Yes. I will second it.
All right. Motion is to re-refer Senate Bill 339 to the Committee on Transportation. Clerk will open the roll. All right, sir. Sorry to waste your time, Senator Barker. These things jump
Ayes
up on us
13,
here.
ayes 13, no zero.
I think we don't have anybody not on the committee. Senator Lucas is on courts.
You want me to sing?
Yeah.
Do a little dance?
Senator Bell's got one. I know. I was
Let's
trying
sing
to find
show tune.
something that wouldn't be quite as time consuming.
Let's sing show tune.
Yeah.
That's what we did.
All right, Senate Bill 255.
You know show tune.
Senator Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have an amendment nature substitute. You want to address that first?
Move and second that the substitute be adopted. All in favor? Aye.
On that question for the clerk, real quick, on that substitute, rather, or DLS, did you go ahead and make that one change to 150? Okay.
I did. Mr. Chairman, I've just submitted it. If it works, it should pop up on your LAS screen.
Okay, with that, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll give you a brief history, and I'll try not to take too long. I will tell you I found it interesting in the State of the Commonwealth speeches, both by Governor Northam and then Governor Youngkin, that there was one thing that everyone stood up on both sides of the aisle, and that was rural broadband. And there's pretty strong support that we need rural broadband. And it's a matter of fairness. It's a matter of equity, especially for children trying to do work at home and for businesses to grow. We can't get first world businesses to third world internet. And I think this is important. It's one of the issues I hear the most about from my constituents, and that's what prompted this bill. With COVID, it's just been that much worse of needing to use a home. I want to tell you a quick story that prompted this bill. In my locality, we had a tower which was badly needed in western Loudoun County. This is an area that I represent, and I've heard from many people who just don't have internet service. And frankly, it's a hilly, mountainous area, and you can't just run cable there. So towers and wireless is really the method to provide service, much like wide broadband deployments has gone in Central America and the world. In hilly areas, that's really the way that you do this. 450 911 calls a month go to the area where this tower was going to be. And the first responder network is on there. Our state troopers, our emergency people, they rely on that. If it doesn't work well, they don't have good signal, they have a hard time getting to places, their connectivity is compromised, and frankly, they're at risk. And when it comes to safety, this is something that I will never compromise on. I believe we always have to put safety first. So when this tower was being proposed, some people didn't like the way it looked. So the people who were putting the tower up, AT&T, worked with the locality, said, we'll lower the height. And that's one of the things the locality said. They said, we'll camouflage it if you want, however you want it camouflaged. They said, okay, we'll do that. We'll put in writing to let other carriers put their repeaters on the tower so another tower is needed. They said, no problem, we'll do that. They said, we'll landscape it. We'll spend $1 million to landscape it. Even though if you look in the current law, that's a little questionable about landscaping. They agreed to do it anyway. And still, it was voted down. And I believe when businesses come to Virginia and they want to do business and they want to provide an important service that's a safety service that's currently not being provided, we need to be reasonable. And there's some instances I believe what makes Virginia the best place to do business is when we exercise the power of the Dillon Rule. And that's why I put in this bill. Because if we want to have rural broadband everywhere in Virginia, we can't have 95 sets of rules. We can't have 95 impediments. And frankly, businesses make decisions on fiscal year basis to put equipment in. If we take longer than a fiscal year to do it, then that opportunity goes by, and that investment's going to go to someplace else in America or someplace else in the world. We miss the opportunity. The $3 billion that was referenced in those State of the Commonwealth addresses, we need to do this now. And I tell you, I believe we're at a critical tipping point. With COVID and the other challenges we have now, if we don't give people the opportunity to have first world signal, and I'm not talking about if I drive in an area and I only experience this for a few minutes because I'm driving through an area and my cell drops. I'm talking about the people who live there every day. And that's their only option. Those are the folks I think we have to think about here today. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to answer any questions. I will tell you, this bill is not without controversy, but I believe it's important, and that's why I brought it for you today.
All right, thank you, Senator Bell. Any questions from the committee for Senator Bell on 255?
That was awesome.
All right, anybody speak in favor of Senate Bill 255?
If you are in the Zoom room and would like to speak in favor of this bill, please raise your hand electronically now.
So we have someone here.
Okay. David?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. David Halleck on behalf of AT&T. As Senator Bell explained, this was an issue that we dealt with in Loudoun County. I think the senator has done a great job of working with the stakeholders to modify the introduced bill in a way that makes it extremely reasonable, and I would hope that you would support it. Thank you.
Phil?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Phil Abraham on behalf of T-Mobile, we support this legislation as well. Thank you.
Sir.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Tom Walls from Verizon. We very much support this bill as well. Thanks very much.
Anyone else in favor of 255?
Mr. Chairman, question.
Senator Spruill.
This tower is near airport.
Mr. Chairman, there are provisions as far as FAA regulations that are already in the code concerning airport and towers. So this wouldn't change anything related to that.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir, Senator Sproul.
Watching TV, which I watch, I know what's already provision in the code, but right now, now I'm not going to vote against Verizon because that's my retirement check every month, so it's good to that part. But I'm saying, but watching TV is that the airports are having problems with these towers built too close. This 5 or G, what they want to call it, they're having problems. So I want to know is how far away is it from the airport, and would it interrupt the 5G?
Well, Mr. Chairman, now I kind of get what the question is. It's really about 5G, and recently they've come up with some research. Some people think 5G is interfering possibly with some of the equipment at airports. What I've read, that's not a definite. This bill doesn't specifically address that, but there are, again, in code, other existing rules related to towers and airports. I don't know if any of the providers would have a better answer than that, but that's kind of a separate issue, I would say.
Exactly, that's what I was going to say. Mr. Chairman, Senator Sproul, it's kind of a separate issue, the 5G rollout and the technology there is when you use 5G within close proximity of an airport. What we're talking about here in this bill is something totally separate. It's the macro towers that aren't going to be near airports under current FAA and existing laws.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, yes, Senator Hashmi.
Just a question for the patron. Do you anticipate that this bill is going to have any impact on home construction? Do you think it'll actually help with congestion in our urban centers?
Mr. Chairman, personally, I believe it will because, frankly, I think it will make areas that have broadband more attractive for people to live in them. But I see we have, so I'm going to phone a friend and ask Andrew Clark to come up here.
You've been drafted, Andrew.
Love it. I apologize. Mr. Chairman, Andrew Clark with the Home Builders Association. I was outside loitering in the hallway, so I didn't hear the question.
Senator Hashmi.
Thank you, Andrew. I was just curious if this bill is going to have any impact on home construction, and do you anticipate that it'll actually help with the congestion in our urban centers?
Mr. Chairman, Andrew Clark, I would say yes. I think just the general availability of infrastructure, whether it's roads, water, sewer, broadband, wireless technology, anything we can do to help get that infrastructure to areas that are seeing a high demand for new residential development will help facilitate that. So,
anyone else to speak on 255?
For those in the Zoom room who would like to speak in opposition, please raise your hand electronically.
We have one.
Dan Holmes, please unmute and begin your testimony now.
Hello, Chairman, members of the committee. Can you hear me?
We've got you.
Wonderful. Thank you. I just wanted to say, while I understand what's behind the bill, some of the concerns the patron has raised, we do have concerns that this would severely impact local decision-making with regard to some of the towers and some of the important factors that are under consideration at the local level. My understanding for the particular tower, where there were alternative sites that could have been lower on the slope that would not have had the visual impact or impact the Appalachian Trail and other historic resources for this particular tower. These types of decisions often come up anytime there is the siting of a cellular tower. This type of change, from the way I read it, would make it very difficult. Well, I would just say most towers, from the way I read this, would be getting approved in certain areas, and that obviously is the will of the legislature. But I just wanted to flag there are some significant considerations at the local level that this would impact dramatically. Thank you.
Hey, Mr. Holmes, I'm sorry, I didn't hear. You probably said it, and I just didn't hear it. Who are you with?
I apologize. I probably didn't, actually, sir. I'm Dan Holmes. I'm with the Piedmont Environmental Council.
Okay, thank you. Next.
Arturo Chang, please unmute and begin your testimony now.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Great.
Yes, sir.
Good morning, Chairman Lewis and members of the committee. My name is Arturo Chang. I'm Senior Counsel of State Government Affairs for the Wireless Infrastructure Association, or WIA. We represent the companies that design, build, manage, and operate wireless infrastructure across the United States. I'm here to testify in opposition to Senate Bill 255. As a preliminary matter, let me just say thank you to Senator Bell and his staff for working with us on this important bill. We truly appreciate his willingness to engage and discuss ways to advance wireless services, wireless deployment in the Commonwealth. And yet, despite our efforts, we have significant concerns because of the serious adverse effects that it will have for Virginia residents. Our concerns are focused on 3 points. First, Section 12 and the height increase from 50 feet to 150 feet would allow for the unfettered proliferation of towers in the entire Commonwealth. In practical terms, every tower application will meet the requirements of Section 12, which is to provide additional coverage. And then that will force localities to essentially rubber stamp every tower application. This means you're going to have towers after towers after towers in areas such as Arlington, Virginia Beach, Richmond, and Prince William County. While we are aware that there have been some applications that have been denied, the small number of cases is not representative of the progress that the industry has made and is making to augment wireless services in the Commonwealth. In short time, you will hear from angry constituents, citizens, and residents that felt robbed of their ability to provide their input. That's just not the way forward in our view. Second, our relationship with localities, cities, and counties is extremely important to us. In fact, we've made great strides in the past decades to forge a positive relationship where we can communicate with one another and address the wireless needs of communities. Cities, counties, and localities are our partners in this whole process. Together is the only way we're going to increase deployment. And we strongly believe that their voices should be heard. To illustrate, very rarely does an application for a tower gets approved as submitted. There are always discussions as to what's the best height, aesthetics, elements to blend with the community, specific accommodations, and others. Section 12 and the height increase to 150 feet removes that entire interaction. Third and last, Section 12 disregards the reality that there are many elements to setting a tower, including environmental considerations, specific historical needs, and many others. Adopting a one-size-fits-all approach for a state with such a diverse topology, terrain, and specific community needs is not the way forward. We concur with Senator Bell that there is tremendous work ahead to address the rural, unserved, and underserved communities, but we do not believe that pushing aside our partners that we have been working with for many years is the right approach. To conclude, Section 12 and the height change will open up the floodgates to towers.
I'm going to have to cut you off, okay? Thank you. You made your points.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anybody else to speak in opposition? Oh, Lord, here we go.
Mr. Chairman, Joe Lurch, Virginia Association of Counties. And first, thanks, Senator Bell. We did have a conversation last night when we talked about his bill. The biggest issue, I think, for us is going from the 50 feet currently in law, where it's really an administrative review at the local level, up to 150 feet is a huge increase. For our members, the ability, as Mr. Chang adequately expressed, the ability to sit down with the Wireless Infrastructure Association, the carriers, to address issues in context of location is very important to our members. So for that reason, we oppose the bill. Thank you.
Senator Favola.
Thank you. Mr. Lurch, Thank you. I have a question.
Sure.
I understand the 150 feet is a big, tall tower. Is there a number that would be acceptable to the Virginia Association of Counties that you could live with?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Favola, to be very, just clear, back when it was put in law several years ago at 50 feet, we actually opposed that because that was taking away the ability of our localities in many suburban and urban areas to address issues of location and height and potential impacts. So there's nothing we would support other than current law.
So, Mr. Chairman, just a follow-up question. So is it fair to say that the Virginia Association of Counties really wants localities to have as much control as possible over the location of these towers? Is that essentially your position?
I think a better way to put it is it's not so much that the local government have control, but the local government have the ability to work with the community, the residents, and the carriers on finding the best solution. Thank you.
That was a nicer way of what I just said.
Next.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Joanna Fowles from Fairfax County. I won't repeat what everyone else has said, but the county also...
first.
Yes, sir. The county also opposes this bill. It will damage a locality's ability to regulate our wireless facilities. As Mr. Holmes said, this change is going to result in most towers being approved. And as Mr. Chang said, the addition of first responders, almost every tower can be said to increase capabilities for first responders. So it's going to be rubber stamping applications. For that reason, we would ask to oppose. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Good morning. Michelle Gowdy from the Virginia Municipal League. I'll spare you my conversation other than we oppose it as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, and thank you. All right, Senator Bell. Does anybody else want to speak on SB 255? Who is that? Senator Hackworth, the man who doesn't exist.
Hopefully I may. I would like to actually speak in support of this. Living in rural Southwest Virginia, it is very difficult for safety, EMS. We have trails there. We've just designated new state parks with kayaking and things, and so that is one of our number one priorities, is getting more cell towers. And I applaud Senator Bell for his efforts in making that easier to happen, so I'd be in support of this.
Anyone else? Any other questions for Senator Bell? Any other members of the committee want to be heard? Senator Pavola.
Question. Senator Bell, I understand what you want to do, and I think there's value in what you want to do, but I'm a little uncomfortable with that. To me, it's almost a bridge too far with the 150 feet. It really is taking away the ability for a locality to deny nearly any application that comes in. I can't think of an application that would not be approved under your bill, and I don't want to go that far. I want to perhaps put more tools in the toolbox to enable local governments to say, well, the statute requires X, we're going to have to approve it, but I don't want the statute to be so broad that, I'm really just usurping the control of the locality in a large way. And I don't have...
Mr. Chairman, I have a suggestion.
Okay, Bell. Thank you.
First, I will tell you, I absolutely wanted to take away the authority from local government because I don't trust them. I don't. And if we rely on them, we're probably never going to get rural broadband. But the suggestion
Mr. Chairman, can the patron tell me what committee he's in? Local government,
I
maybe?
love this one. I love this one.
Senator Bell.
The reality of it is we're at a point where there's going to be a lot of broadband investment now and over the next 2 years. I suggest we put a sunset clause for 2 years, and that'll allow this current money to go out there without stopping it. After that, then we can come back and reevaluate it.
All right, it's been moved and seconded that the bill be amended to provide for a sunset clause. I guess that's a voice vote for the amendment. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the substitute has been amended.
Mr. Chairman, the last word, if I could, is, and I don't want to delay this, but I've spoken to my friends, and they're doing their job, representing local government here. But the bottom line is, anytime we take away any power from local government, they're going to oppose it. And there was nothing I could offer that would get them to support this. So the bottom line is, I think if we want to have rural broadband, we can't have 95 sets of rules and impediments. We need to move forward, and this is a great example where I think we have to exercise the Dillon rule power. So with that, Mr. Chairman,
that's your bill. Oh, I'm sorry, Senator Howe.
Thank you. I have a question for Senator Bell. Should the bill come back to us from the House, would you, without the provision of the 2 years, would you strike it?
Mr. Chairman, if it would be the will of committee to move forward, I would be willing to strike it with that provision if that were taken off.
Thank you.
Senator DeStaff.
Mr. Chairman, I had a quick question of the patron.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Bell, since it's still kind of early in the process, do you think if we took this by for a week, Senator Bell, that we might get a little closer on this one, or you don't think either side's willing to budge?
Mr. Chairman, honestly, I don't think there's any willing to budge on this. I met with all the stakeholders that I know of on this one. And frankly, the wireless community who sells the equipment to the major providers, I was surprised they were against this because it's going to be good for them. come to find out, they don't necessarily want a lot more competition here if the business environment's too good. So I don't think that there's really room to make movement on this. I think we're pretty much where we're going to be. But again, you do have my word. If the sunset comes off, I'll strike it.
Senator Favola.
Senator Bell, this would apply to projects then that come before the governing body starting July 1? Because whenever local governments always have projects in the process. So right now I'm reading the bill to mean it would take effect July 1. So anything that's up for approval July 1 or after would be subject to this? Is that maybe I'll ask General Counsel that question.
Mr. Chairman, I would rely on council to draft it, but that would be my understanding July 1st and beyond.
Jeff?
Mr. Chairman.
Hang on a sec. We're getting a rule in here.
Mr. Chairman, I think we could probably add a clause which makes clear applications submitted after July 1st, 2022.
I would like that clause added. That
Make
would
a motion
be
to that effect.
So moved.
Second. Moved and seconded. The bill be amended to provide for July 1 effective. Is that the effective date? Projects submitted after July 1. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Senator Donovan.
I guess the part that bothers me is I feel like the localities do the consensus building in a community about the location of a tower. And are we in this way just trying to remove them from that responsibility so that towers can be placed because we're worried about not in my backyard? Or are we defeating the opportunity for homeowners to maybe have a weigh in and a say on, where these go?
Mr. Chairman, my response is I've not only in my locality, but other localities where I've seen these projects stall, as I've researched this, I don't think consensus building was really part of the process, frankly. I think it's broken down. And that's why I believe we need to roll this back if we want to go forward with this. The Short Hill Tower I discussed, the two businesses that would have been hurt the most are the two stakeholders or two wineries at the foot of that tower. And if it would have hurt the landscaping or the view in any way, they would have been hurt the most. They were the two strongest proponents of it. Matter of fact, one of them had a robbery. They were hidden in the closet while the robbers were there, and they didn't have cell service to call 911 and report it. They sprinted a quarter mile down the street to get service and then report a robbery. People shouldn't have to operate in that kind of environment. So I believe when things like that happen, and frankly, when we don't respond to an issue of safety, it requires us to take action.
All right.
Mr.
I'm sorry, Senator McPike.
I guess one question. In your discussions with stakeholders, any conversations take place around what the example you just brought up, which is absolute coverage gaps? I think there's a difference between additional wireless coverage, as we know, between 5G and other things, and no coverage. Has there been any discussions with stakeholders on filling that gap? I see that as the most critical thing. If you have, as Senator Hackworth said, if you're out kayaking, you got no coverage, that's a critical need. But where is that fine line between absolutely nothing, but there's still something? There's the way to gauge it and narrow this down within this context.
Mr. Chairman, we actually did seek to do that in response to that concern. And if you notice, the one provision talks about if there's no tower within 4 miles. And that really addresses the underserved, I think, as you would say, and the unserved. In some cases, we could argue that the underserved, frankly, if they have 3G, that's a big problem because several carriers have said in February they're no longer going to support 3G. So if you have 3G today and that's your only service, you're quickly going to be unserved entirely. So we did try to address that concern. But I will tell you, it's complicated as signals overlap, particularly when topography is not level.
Senator Favola.
One last request. Would it be possible for you to work with stakeholders to maybe carve out urban areas or condense areas? So we're really talking about expansive areas, maybe the more rural parts of the state. Some of us who are representing urban areas are getting lots of text messages that this is not such a good idea. So I'm trying to find a middle ground.
Mr. Chairman, I will say that there are already carve-outs in existing code in relation to small cell towers that goes to urban areas, historic districts, and other carve-outs that are already there. This would not take away those protections that are there. And frankly, if an area is already well served with 5G like Fairfax, they're not going to put in a gazillion more towers. That's a scare tactic.
Mr. Chairman, follow-up question. Who determines if the area is well served? Because providers come to you and say, oh, no, we can do better. We like free market. We want to offer another opportunity to your residents, when in fact your residents probably have 3 or 4 opportunities. And so the provider may think they're underserved, and I can tell you parts of my community are not underserved.
Mr. Chairman, in this bill specifically goes to first responders, and first responders would be the ones, and they have not complained over Fairfax County and the signal there. They have complained about it in rural areas. So that is really a key differentiator why your area would not be have a deluge of people coming to do this.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Spruill, last one.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We keep on. We're going to gut this bill. I move approval as amended.
Second. There's a motion and a second that the substitute has amended be approved. And let me just say, Senator Bell, I'm completely sympathetic. I just really think fundamentally these things need to be fought out, slugged out at the local level. So, all right, clerk will open the roll.
Ayes 9, no 6.
I thank the committee.
All right, we had a little glitch in the system, so we're going to have to go back and reconsider Senate Bill 52 for a vote, Senator Cosgrove's bill. You just want to open the roll and let everybody vote again?
You got to having voted on the
Oh, that's right, we do have to read.
Yes.
Having voted on proposing items, Mr. Chairman, I ask that we reconsider.
All right, and Senator Stanley seconds, and so the bill's in front of us for reconsideration.
Ayes 15, no 0.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. We need to vote on the bill, underlying bill.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
Since it's back before the committee, just a question. Did the good senator resolve the prorated share voluntary contribution in amendment or any other form?
No.
Yeah. Okay.
Ready? Is it ready to vote? Now, okay. The vote is?
Ayes 14, no 0. Abstentions 1.
All right, Senator Lucas, Senate Bill 526.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning to you and the committee. Mr. Chairman, Senate Bill 526 is designed to provide certainty and uniformity to the process for companies to install certain security fences. We've all heard about the problems recently with the theft of catalytic converters. I've had my own problems with this issue with catalytic converters were stolen off of my vans in my business. This legislation will help businesses that want to install battery-charged security fences to protect accesses like tractor trailers, vehicles, landscaping equipment, or other expensive equipment that is stored outdoors. These fences have an effective deterrent to thieves and are used by some of the country's largest trucking companies and shippers. When you have theft happening on your property, you need an immediate fix, not 1, 6, 9, or 12 months from now. Legislation such as this has passed in 12 states, including Maryland, New Jersey, Florida, Georgia, and South Carolina. It provides a list of requirements for these fences dealing with safety, signage, heights, and zoning. Only allowed in areas that are not residential, these systems are safe and effective. If these requirements are met, then the security fence is treated like any other alarm system and can get permitted. The locality still has the ability to inspect the fence to ensure compliance with their requirements. This bill is about making sure that businesses can protect their property from those that would otherwise try to do it damage. And Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, I would hope that you would agree.
Thank you, Senator Lucas. Any questions for Senator Lucas? Yep, I'm sorry, who is that? Senator DeStaff.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Lucas, I'm really happy to see this bill. I think this is a really good bill, and I'm glad that you're getting tough on crime.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the committee for Senator Lucas?
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Stanley.
I mean, ultimately, what we have here right now is because these are kind of a bird of a different feather, our localities really don't know how to zone or permit them, and that's creating a holdup. And in the meantime, you can't have that second layer of protection until our counties understand or our cities understand what this actually is, when we should just be able to put them in without having that holdup. Is that why this bill is here?
That's part of it, Mr. Chairman, if I might respond to the senator. Yes, that is part of it. And of course, if you have a better solution to the problem, I would entertain that.
I have no better solution.
Any other questions for Senator Lucas? All right, anyone to speak in favor of Senate Bill 526?
Anyone in the Zoom room who would like to speak in favor of this bill, please raise your hand electronically now. There does not appear to be anyone in the Zoom room.
In the audience for 526. Anybody speak against 526?
If you are in the Zoom room and would like to speak against this bill, please raise your hand electronically now. There does not appear to be any, Mr. Chair.
Anybody on the committee? I thought I heard some mumblings down there. Does anybody have anything to say? All right, the bill's in front of us.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator McPike.
Sorry, just one question on Section 4, and there may be someone who can help assist and answer it, that says that a locality should not establish or otherwise impose any product or installation or operational requirements basically associated with the system. My question is, most localities have Knox boxes for fire EMS ingress to make sure it's safe, just in case that building's on fire or you have an emergency within the facility. Police and fire need to be able to shut down the system. For the legislative record, it's my understanding that that does not preclude the installation of a Knox box system for entry, or can that be misinterpreted? Because I want to make sure that I understand that these systems do include the capability for Knox box. And Knox box is, by the way, sort of a universal key that fire and EMS can have access to a facility if that facility has agreed to install it. So I just want to make sure we cadence. I understand they do work with the Knox box, but as written, I just want to make sure there's not a local government provision for requiring the installation. Can you clarify? Sorry for a long-winded question, but
Jeff,
I just want to walk it through.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Jeff Palmer with Reed Smith. We represent one of the companies that operates these types of alarm security systems, and our particular product is always installed with a Knox box. If there was a concern, we would never challenge a locality that wanted to require a Knox box, but if it would give you more comfort, we'd be happy to add to paragraph C the requirement for a Knox box to ensure that that was a requirement, so that first responders would always have access to the property.
Mr. Chairman, I think that might be prudent, just in case there's other manufacturers. That way it's set up in the code, that there's at least the first responders have the safety and access to such systems. Okay. So I don't know if council can work out a potential amendment to allow that to occur.
I think it could be a number 7 on line 39 that says it's equipped with a mechanism for emergency first responders to access the property, to deactivate the system and access the property.
That sound good, Jeff?
Yes, sir.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Been moved and seconded that the bill be amended to provide for first responder access. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? The bill's amended.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Have a good day.
Madam,
we've got to vote.
Mr. Chair, I move to report
I thought you were done.
as amended.
Been moved and properly seconded that Senate Bill 526 be reported. Clerk will open the roll.
Like last night's football games.
That's even better. I thank you again, Mr.
Ayes
Chairman.
15, no zero.
All right, Senator Edwards, I see you've been sitting here for a while. Senate Bill 132.
I see half of my Senate Judiciary Committee is here, including Senator Stanley. And anyway, this is a bill requested by the City of Roanoke It's the No Smoking in Outdoor Parks bill. There are a lot of localities that are now doing that, something like 33 North Carolina localities, 8 Maryland localities, 7 Kentucky localities, 3 Tennessee localities, including Johnson City, Tennessee. What this would do would say, in an outdoor park, if you have proper signage, you cannot smoke within 100 feet of a recreational center, outdoor playgrounds, and sports fields. Not only is this healthy to get smoke away, because secondhand smoke is not good for anybody, as you know, but also there's a tendency for smokers to put butts on the ground. And so this is a request by the city of Roanoke to clean. We have a great greenway that's extremely popular. We have parks and recreational centers, and the city of Roanoke would like to have this authority to pass an ordinance to do this within 100 feet of, as I say, sports fields, recreational centers, playgrounds, and so forth, with a posted sign. Very simple bill. I don't know if anybody from the city of Roanoke is here to speak in favor of it. Yeah, here.
Anybody here to speak in favor of Senate Edwards SB 132?
For those in the Zoom room who would like to speak in favor of this bill, please raise your hand electronically now. There does not appear to be any at this time, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Bateman?
Hi, Mr. Chairman. My name is Laura Bateman, and I'm here on behalf of the City of Roanoke. This bill was a part of their legislative program for the General Assembly, and they see this as really helping further their stewardship for public health, and urge your support.
Next.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Joanna Faust on behalf of Fairfax County again. Fairfax County also strongly supports this. Our sports fields, recreation centers, and playgrounds are where our children and sportsmen and women play and recreate, so we would support that. We would even ask that in Fairfax County, many of our parks, outdoor parks, are actually owned by the Fairfax County Park Authority. The bill states localities. We would ask also that property, parks owned by the Fairfax or Park Authorities established pursuant to Virginia Code 15.25702. But we support the bill. Thank you.
Anyone else in support? Anyone against Senate Bill 132?
If there's anyone in the Zoom room who would like to speak against this bill, please raise your hand electronically now. There does not appear to be any at this time, Mr.
Anybody
Chair.
here in the audience against 132? Any questions from the committee?
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Reeves.
To the patron of the bill, does this include vaping, and does it also include smoking marijuana?
I think it has to do with...
It says non-smoking, Mr. Chairman. I'm just
smoking.
Want some clarification.
Limit smoking in outdoor parks. If that is under the definition of smoking, I guess so. It doesn't say tobacco, it just says smoking. People generally know what that means.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Bell.
Mr. Chairman, if memory serves me correct, I don't think you're in the code of marijuana. I refer to council. You can't smoke that in public anyway. Is that correct? Oh, he's nodded his head. So that's already covered. The vaping thing, I think that's an interesting twist.
I think Senator Dunn, do you have a question?
I do.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman and Senator Edwards, this 100 feet of a sports field, is that property that's owned by the locality?
It says, the locality may limit smoking in outdoor parks, recreational facilities, and playgrounds. It is established pursuant to a section of the code, 15.2-1806, to designated areas within the 100 feet, et cetera. The question is, what is 15.2-1806? They have established playgrounds, parks, and so forth, pursuant to that authority. What is 15.2-1806? I assume it's the city. It sounds like it's the localities, parks, recreational facilities, and playgrounds.
Mr. Chairman.
That wouldn't be private property, I wouldn't think.
Well, that's, I think, the whole point, is that if they already own the property, they have sovereignty over making these ordinance decisions. But I believe this within 100 feet is looking at other people's property in the surrounding area. So you're now asking for governance over my backyard. And so I'd like an opinion from council, if I may.
Jeff, you're on the spot again.
Well, first of all, I would say that under the Dillon rule, I think the locality's got to seek this authority even on its own property. So I think the intent was this applies to local government property. Whether it could also apply to private property is not clear.
Senator Donovan.
I believe we have given authority to the parks, as in 15.2/1806. We can look it up and see, but I believe they have authority for an ordinance in their own, on their own property and parks and outdoor. But correct me if I'm wrong.
I don't think so. We had a bill that I carried some years ago that would keep, with signage, keeping smoking away from certain the civic center. Like we have an outdoor theater, and keeping it from the theater, but not from parks generally. This is broader than the previous bill that we had some time ago.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman, I just don't
I'm sorry,
understand
go ahead,
why
Senator.
100 feet would need to be there if it was property owned by the locality or the park authority. If it's property that's owned by them and it's within 100 feet, that's very different than if it's private property or surrounding property.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Spruill.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, a couple of questions. In Chesapeake, at our park, we have Jubilee Day. So on that Jubilee Day, it's the park. We got kids, a certain section running around. You got Jubilee Day for Chesapeake. So you're saying that because there are kids at that park on Jubilee Day, that they can't smoke?
Well, no smoking within outdoor parks, recreation facilities, and playgrounds within
Chairman?
100 feet.
And the second question was that we have the sheriff barbecue in Chesapeake, sheriff barbecue. A lot of folks out there. You got kids, and Chesapeake Park's a big park. You got kids all over the place. And that's a barbecue. That's a big money maker, again, for the sheriff's department to help the sheriff to buy these stuff for those who are incarcerated. So I'm trying to figure out how you're going to enforce that. We don't want to do away with Chesapeake Jubilee Day because 80% of the people who are there are adults, and they be drinking and having smoke within them, whatever the law says. So I'm just trying to figure out how they're going to manage that. The thousands and thousands of folks come out there on Jubilee Day and smoking, and they have kids out there playing as well. So I'm trying to figure out how are you going to manage that?
It would have to be an ordinance passed by the locality after a hearing. The locality have this. So all it is giving authority to the locality to do this if they want to by ordinance.
And Mr. Chairman, maybe I can clarify this, and maybe General Counsel can. So, based on Senator Edwards' response, as I understand it, a locality could exempt private property that happened to be within 100 feet, or, I mean, that's sort of a key question here.
Yeah, I don't know why they couldn't. I mean, they can design the ordinance within the confines of this authority.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, the section reference 1806, 15.2.1806 doesn't mention anything about smoking or ordinances to prohibit smoking or what have you. So there is no current authority on the books without this bill in front of you. And the bill on line 27 says may limit smoking in outdoor parks, recreation facilities, and playgrounds. It's really not providing any authority to limit smoking outside of parks, for example, on private property that are adjacent to parks. I mean, the way I read it, it clearly applies to parks, park property, not
Then,
to...
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir, Senator Vola.
Then, for clarity, if it really is limiting in outdoor parks, recreational facilities, and playgrounds, why can't we just put a period on line 28 after 15.2-1806? I mean, Wouldn't
Well,
that provide clarity that we really are just talking about public property?
Well, it's only to 100 feet of the sports field, recreational centers, and playgrounds. But I don't think the locality would have the authority to limit smoking in somebody's backyard, even if it somehow would be within 100 feet.
I think that's the question, is whether if somebody's backyard was within 100 feet.
It's highly unlikely, but
Would a locality be able to limit the smoking? I guess if we could get clarity to that question, that might help.
Should we just do away with 100 feet?
Yeah, I guess I would, for purposes of
that'd be
moving
fine.
the conversation along, I'd put
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we put a period on line 28.
Senator Bell.
After 1806.
Mr. Chairman, I have to agree with Senator Favola. It does seem to take away that confusion of the 100 feet. But separate from that, a more basic question for council, is smoking defined in the code?
The chapter that this section is in, let's see, I've lost it now. Does define smoking. And I'd be glad to read that definition out loud. It's in section 15.2-2820. Defines smoke or smoking means the carrying or holding of any lighted pipe, cigar, or cigarette of any kind, or any other lighted smoking equipment, or the lighting, inhaling, or exhaling of smoke from a pipe, cigar, or cigarette of any kind.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going back to my earlier comment. I made a motion that we put a period on line 28 after 15.2-1806.
I think that would make it clear.
Is that okay with the patron?
That's fine.
Mr. Chairman?
Senator DeStaff.
If I may, I'm going to make a suggestion, and I think I understand the intent of the bill is just trying to make it 100 feet from the recreational areas where there's high density. I think I really think if we took this by for a week, gave them an opportunity to rewrite this to where it says within the park property and within 100 feet of this, as long as that 100 feet is still within the park property, then they have the authority to do it. But I think that this can be rewritten to make it a lot clearer and not as confusion with everything going on. We can strike the 100 feet, but then you're saying the entire park. I think the intent here is just 100 feet with the playgrounds and the sports.
Right, and I think the intent is to allow some smoking.
Yes, sir.
So anyway, Senator Edwards, rather than try and rewrite your legislation here, would you like it to go by for a week?
I like to get it done, whatever fits the
Mr. Chairman.
pleasure of the
Yep, Senator
committee.
Jeff, could you explain to me a park, as Chesapeake Park, as big as the park is, how you going to have 100 feet for kids in just one area when they got stuff all over that park? And I'm concerned about the Jubilee Day, talking about the Sheriff Day, and people everywhere, kids everywhere. So I'm trying to figure out how are you going to limit a park such as Chesapeake Park as big as it is? How are you going to limit just 100 feet from a park when the kids play all over that park? And that's our biggest day on Jubilee Day. And so unless you can let the kids stay home, and when the sheriff has his barbecue day, the kids play in the park. We got 2 or 3 parks in that big park. So how are you going to limit that? So geared to just Roanoke, this reminds me of a bill of North Virginia. Sound like to me this is a North Virginia bill. Let's get for Roanoke, but don't interrupt Chesapeake. We want our Jubilee Park. We want our Sheriff Day. And the people come out and drink and they smoke. And the kids go in the playground. They got 2 or 3 playgrounds. So we can't rope it all for everywhere. The whole park has got kids everywhere in the whole park. Thank you.
All right, Senator Edwards, you want to take the chance to let it go by?
What the pleasure of the body is?
Well, I'll leave it up to you. It's your bill. You want to roll the dice?
Mr. Chairman,
Pays your nickel, you takes your chance.
That's fine.
I respectfully ask the patron to take it by for the day. I think there is interest in helping get this bill passed,
That'd be
but
fine.
the clarity question needs to be cleared up.
Okay, be fine with me.
All right. It's been, I guess, moved and seconded that the bill go by for the week. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Let's see.
Got one more bill, Senator Edwards.
Yeah, Senate Bill, let's see, what number is this? 140. Again, requested by the City of Roanoke and the Fire Department. This would require, authorize rather, localities to require the retrofitting of any building containing one or more dwelling units to install and maintain smoke alarms. There currently exists, this is the case with regard to schools, juvenile care facilities, assisted living facilities, and nursing homes. But this would allow localities to pass an ordinance to require installation of smoke detectors in any building of one or more dwelling units, hotels, motels, and the like. There's an Attorney General's opinion that requires this to be done, if this can be done at all. In order to accomplish the statute, must specifically, in 3 places, make it clear that the local ordinance is not tied to the date of the building's construction. And the City of Roanoke wants this, and Laura Bateman will speak for the city, as well as David Gwynn, who's a Deputy Chief of the Roanoke Fire Department.
Thank you, Senator Edwards. Mr. Chairman, Laura Bateman, Legislative Liaison, assisting the City of Roanoke. This was part of Roanoke's legislative package, and Deputy Fire Chief Gwen from Roanoke should be on the line this morning and can speak to any questions regarding the bill.
Thank you. Are there any, let me first say, are there any questions from the panel? Senator DeStaff, do you have a question?
Whoop, there we go. So I had Mr. Chairman, Senator Edwards, just a quick question. Have you met with the state building code officials on this, or Department of Housing and Community Development, to see if this can be done through the building code process?
Well, the problem is that Attorney General Cuccinelli had an opinion in 2013 that said an ordinance that, in his opinion, these localities could not do this to retrofit buildings for compliance with the current provisions of the Uniform Statewide Building Code. So,
Mr. Chairman, just to follow up, typically we don't legislate the building code. There's a process that we go through for that, and I'm afraid we're about to set a precedent where we're going to legislate the building code without giving the state building code officials and the Department of Housing and Community Development the opportunity to chime into this appropriately and run it through their process.
Any other questions from the committee? Senator Favola.
Mr. Chairman, I think this is an exception. I mean, we're really talking about the health and safety of individuals who may be in older buildings, and we're asking that, as I understand it, smoke alarms be placed in each room, is it? Or appropriately, I guess. I think this is something the committee can act on.
Anybody else from the committee before we go to public comment? Senator Bell.
Mr. Chairman, I guess my concern, and maybe we'll hear this in testimony, but if we looked at what potentially this could cost some businesses, because it seems like a bigger facility, particularly if it's like an older historic one and they want to keep the installation to match the historic nature of the facility, could be quite pricey.
Mr. Chairman, just one quick follow-up.
Sure.
And I want to say that it was 5 years ago, we did do something with this in the building code, but we ran it through the process and then worked with them to change the building code for putting smoke detectors outside of bedrooms in rental houses, outside of bedrooms in apartments. There's a whole section of the building code, and I think we have Andrew in the crowd here. He can probably step up and probably knows this off the top of his head, but we spent a lot of time doing this 4 or 5 years ago, and we had testimony from both sides. We really worked closely with the building officials and Department of Housing and Community Development, with our public safety guys and our fire guys to tweak that. And I thought we did a good job, but I'd like to see if Andrew has, if he can remember that specifically.
Andrew, you might want to start standing out in the hall there, bud.
Mr. Chairman, Andrew Clark with the Home Builders Association. To answer the question, yes, there was a significant revision to this section in 2018. To the broader point, though, the building code update process just started. And I think code proposals can be submitted through March or May. You can look at the maintenance code, the construction code, actually it's already taken care of there, the existing building code, all those different code books kind of cover what happens when you renovate a house or just when you're a property owner who's managing a property with tenants in it. So we don't have a position on the bill, agree that there's a public safety element to it, and it makes all the sense. We've actually worked to get better technology in smoke alarms in new homes, but would, I guess, caution the committee about making code changes in the legislative process when we have a pretty rigorous regulatory review. Thank you.
We have the Deputy Fire Secretary.
Yeah, anybody speak in favor of the bill?
For those in the Zoom room who would like to speak in favor of this bill, please raise your hand electronically now. Mr. Gwen, please unmute and begin your testimony now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning. My name is David Gwynn. I'm the Deputy Chief of Community Risk Reduction for the Roanoke Fire EMS Department, and I'm the Fire Code Official for the City of Roanoke. I'm honored to speak on behalf of the city in support of Senate Bill 140, which really clarifies the authority of localities to enforce requirements associated with smoke alarms. According to a 2021 report by the National Fire Protection Association, 3 out of 5 home fire deaths occurred in properties with no smoke alarms present. Smoke alarms failed to operate. In addition, the death rate per 1,000 home structure. I'm sorry, was I muted? I thought I'd unmuted. I apologize.
No, it was my mistake. You're good. Sorry.
Okay. How far did I get? I don't want to belabor the point.
You had just mentioned 3 out of 500.
Sure, thank you. 3 out of 5 home fire deaths occurred in properties with no smoke alarms present or where the smoke alarms failed to operate. And in addition, the death rate per 1,000 home structure fires is 55% lower in homes with working smoke alarms compared to those without. This is a staggering difference in outcomes, especially when you consider that over 95% of American homes report having a smoke alarm. While our department responds to approximately 70 significant fire incidents a year, I would like to relate the story of one October fire to this committee. The outcome of this incident had 2 primary factors at work: the quick response of the brave men and women of our department and the existence of smoke alarms in the fire building. The presence of these alarms allowed for the quick response of our department and the rescue of 2 critically injured patients and 2 patients suffering from mild to moderate smoke inhalation. While the 2 critically injured patients died approximately a week later, the 2 other residents of the home survived. I firmly believe that these 2 survivors would not be here today without the presence of smoke alarms, and this is only one of an untold number of instances where smoke alarms truly make a difference. I acknowledge that there's always a hesitancy to impose retroactive building and life safety requirements. I would like to point out, however, that the General Assembly has in the past seen fit to establish retroactive requirements regarding fire sprinkler systems and fire alarm systems in several high-risk occupancy classes. All of these previously enacted retrofit requirements cost orders of magnitude more than the approximately $21 that would be required for the installation of smoke alarms in a standard 2-bedroom apartment unit. Additionally, these retroactive requirements still require less than what will be required by the current edition of the Uniform Statewide Building Code in any comparable building built today, from a single-family dwelling to a high-rise hotel. Finally, and in conclusion, it's not the intent of the Roanoke Fire EMS Department or the City of Roanoke to inspect every home within our city for the existence of smoke alarms. Instead, our goal is to ensure that smoke alarms are present where our greatest risk is, within hotels, motels, boarding houses, apartment buildings, and within rental properties located within our rental inspection districts.
All right,
I respectfully ask for your support of this bill to allow our city to implement and enforce the simplest and most effective fire mitigation measure available. the installation of smoke alarms.
Thank you for your comments. And just so the future, I see we've got other people in the queue here. I don't think there's anybody on this committee that doubts the need and efficacy of smoke alarms and smoke detectors. I think the issues, as you've heard from some of our questions up here, is about process and whether there's a process for vetting these proposals outside of the General Assembly. And so I think that's where, if you could focus your comments maybe on that, not on the need for smoke detectors and the good that smoke detectors do and all of that, because I think we're all on board with that. We just need some guidance about why we should not follow the process that we've set out with the building code. Next.
Dan Webb, please unmute and begin your testimony now.
Hi, I'm Dan Webb, Code Compliance Administrator for the City of Roanoke. I'm responsible for the enforcement of the Virginia Maintenance Code. I'm in full support of Senate Bill 140, giving localities the authority to require retrofitting of buildings containing one or more dwelling units with smoke alarms, regardless of when the building was constructed.
Thank you.
2012, I apologize.
I heard you pause, and I leapt on it. Go ahead.
Yes. The smoke alarms were in the 2012 edition of the Virginia Maintenance Code and was removed in the 2015 edition and the current 2018 edition. What we'd like to do is change this 15.2-922 code to allow the smoke alarms in dwelling units. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Chip Dix, please unmute and begin your testimony now.
So, ladies and gentlemen of the committee, speaking to the actual language of the legislation to make sure that we understand exactly what it does. So first of all, on line 13, it's permissive for local governments, which means that you would have potentially and likely different standards in different localities with respect to smoke alarms. Second of all, as Senator DeStefano mentioned, if you look at the language on lines 21 and so on, it talks about the installation on line 23 shall not require additional wiring, hard wiring, and therefore could be battery operated. And so that was designed. This came through the Housing Commission, and we spent about 6 or 8 months working on that before it went through the Building Code Work Group. The other observation I would make is the current proposed language, when it says regardless of when the building was constructed, directly conflicts with lines 25, 26, 27, and 28, where it says nothing herein shall authorize the locality to upgrade any smoke alarms provided by the building code in effect at the time of the renovation for which the building permit was required. So the last observation I would make is that if this were to become law, number one, it would only authorize localities enabling legislation as of July 1 of this year. Second of all, there's no requirement for a phase-in process to allow an effective date at some point. So I would suggest to you that the language would need to be adjusted. And the last comment I'd make is that this generally is done through the Building Code Work Group process. And so with that, thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Chip. All right, Senator McPike, I see you hovering over your mic there. Do you have anything? I'm sorry. Come on up.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Devin Cabot on behalf of the Virginia Fire Chiefs Association, and the fire chiefs support the bill.
Thank you. Senator McPike.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is Mr. Dick still on the line?
I am, Mr. Chairman.
And so, Mr. Chair, Mr. Dix, I believe, has been a part of the process for quite some time. Can you tell us why it was in the code process some 6 years ago and then also removed?
Senator McPike, I'm not sure, other than the fact that what we looked at, there was a recognition that there were some 40-some local ordinances, many of which that conflicted with each other in terms of location of smoke alarms and also the types of smoke alarms. And so as a result of which, the effort was to require that all the local government ordinances come into effect. I believe there was a delayed effective date for a year from 18 to June 30th of 2019. And all of the provisions were taken out of what was a comprehensive piece of legislation in 2018. It again came through the House Commission. It removed a bunch of sections and clarified and made uniform sections and relied upon the building code and the fire code. And I think that's the reason it got taken out of the Code of Virginia. So there were like, I would say 10 or 12 different sections that got modified and added to that session.
Thank you. And follow, Mr. Chairman.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking to the bill.
Sure.
You know, I normally agree that things like this should go through the process and agree with Senator DeSteph, but we're in 2022. You know, the NFPA data is embarrassing to look at the fire deaths. At some point, we've got to put our foot down and tell folks, enough is enough. Enough of the games. Get it done in the existing building code, and let's protect people. I mean, thank goodness former Governor and U.S. Senator Rob and Linda had working alarms, and you know, I know they're still struggling through a fire and the results of it. It's absolutely devastating when the fire growth rate with the materials in existing occupancies spread incredibly fast based on the composition of materials. I can't believe, you know, I thought it was embarrassing when I joined this body in 2016 that many things did not exist in terms of fire safety code. And I've listened in both general laws and in this committee over the years saying, no, we're working on it, we're working on it. And here we are 6-7 years later. And we still have provisions like this that haven't moved forward. And so I have another different initiatives that I've also worked through the building code process, and I'm grateful for their participation. This is a little bit different. This is giving the authority for certain existing facilities, not the standard of which the code is applied, but the where. And at some point, we've got to make a decision as a General Assembly to move public safety and fire safety to the forefront. And therefore, I will be supporting the bill based on how it's narrowly drafted for localities and existing facilities. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. All right, folks, anybody else? The bill's in front of us.
Second.
Moved and seconded that Senate Bill 140 be reported. Clerk will open the roll.
Ayes 7, noes 8.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'd like to make a suggestion on this, that the chair send a letter to the state building code officials and Department of Housing and Community Development to, again, look at this and see if they can come up with a better way.
I don't mind doing that, but I'm assuming the city of Roanoke can do that as well, can't they?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I think it comes with a little more weight when you send that letter.
Yeah, I don't mind doing it, sure.
Mr. Chairman, I endorse that suggestion.
All righty.
And I would add, Mr. Chairman, I would add one thing. Perhaps you can ask for an expedited review, given the health and safety measures that we're trying to address here.
All right, next up, Senator Survell has requested that Senate Bill 251 go by for the week so that he can twist some arms. Although somebody make a motion to that effect. Senator Favola moves.
Second.
It's been seconded. All in favor? Aye. Bye for the week. Senator Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. This is Senate Bill 206, having to do with historic landmarks. Section 15.2-2306 was adopted a couple generations ago, which allows a locality to have a historic ordinance and to designate a historic district. And obviously, a lot of localities, including mine and a number of others, have done so. And the question then becomes, well, what if you have a building which is designated historic or a structure that's designated historic and the applicant or the homeowner comes in and wants to renovate it, modernize it, what have you, and the local historic society or the neighbors or whomever else objects, and who has standing to actually object to this renovation? And this happened in a case I represented Historic Alexandria Foundation in 2020, a case that went up to the Supreme Court, and my clients were eventually kicked out on standing. This bill addresses that, but really in a broader context. It talks about who may appeal to the circuit court if there's a dispute regarding the historic ordinance and regarding the designated landmark. I also have a closer to home issue involving the Fairfax Courthouse, where I objected to the removal of basically any landmark that referenced the Civil War a couple years ago. So anyways, that's what it is. It has a somewhat slightly technical issue that may need to be addressed, but that's the gist of the bill.
Any questions from the committee for Senator Peterson? Is there anybody to speak in favor of the bill?
For those in the Zoom room who would like to speak in favor of this bill, please raise your hand electronically now. There does not appear to be any at this time, Mr. Chair.
Anybody to speak in opposition to Senator Peterson's bill?
For those in the Zoom room who would like to speak in opposition, please raise your hand electronically now. There does not appear to be any at this time, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Nobody likes it, nobody hates it. That's great.
Well, I will say, if I might, Mr. Chair, I know the Alexandria Historic Society supports this bill, and I actually would have expected they would have been appearing, but I don't know. Anyways, that's the gist of the bill.
Last call. Anybody in the audience for or against Senate Bill 206?
Mr. Chair.
Senator McPike.
Question for the patron.
Yes, sir.
So, I guess Section 3 says basically any resident of the locality provided input under Section C. So if I send an email at some point that I don't like Senator Hackworth's fencing design, I now create, and I just shot an email to the Planning Commission. Now I have a right of action to appeal after he spent $20,000 getting his fence approved and to hold up my fence from being installed.
Well, it says any resident of the locality who provided public input under subsection C. Subsection C actually has to do with the enactment of the local historic district. So when they inventoried and identified all of the landmarks, buildings, or structures in the historic district. So the fact that you may have sent an email to somebody years later is not. This is not as broad as you think it is. It's subsection C. So if you scroll back to subsection C, that has to do with people that were involved with the actual establishment of the local historic district. Basically, what this is doing, I'll kind of uncover the code here. It's allowing the historic districts themselves to have standing. I mean, the historic organizations.
Okay, and so I follow, Mr. Chair?
Sure.
Who has that standard of what is a historic? I mean, I set up the Hackworth Historical Society, and that's a qualifying entity. I'm not saying he's ancient, but, we all get there some point. No, I'm just kidding.
All right.
He's just picking on because he's not here.
Senator McPike doesn't like it because I sued his locality, so, yeah.
Okay. Was that a question? Do you have a question for him?
Well, no, what is standing? I mean, I represent the city of Manassas. We have historic structures. It's important for me to understand for the local businesses what would occur, because we have renovations, we have restaurants, we have a lot of folks improvising right now that are coming out of COVID, and I want to understand and want to make sure the committee fully understands what this means in terms of a project and the timeline for implementing a project and what the right of actions are. So if you can spend more time on
Sure. I'll spend as much time as you want. You might be familiar with the city of Alexandria. They have an old and historic district, okay? In order to renovate or develop a property in the old and historic district, you have to go to the Board of Architectural Review, and you have to get permission from them. If you get permission from the Board of Architectural Review, that is then appealed to the City Council. That's already under the city's ordinance. The question then becomes, if the City Council rules against you, who has standing to pursue that to the Circuit Court? And in my case, I represented the local historic society, the Alexandria Historic Society, and they were ruled to not have standing, even though they were the ones that had originally created the ordinance. Now, that's Alexandria. Manassas has a historic society. We have one in Fairfax City. I'm sure Richmond has one. I think there was a similar situation in Virginia Beach with a historic structure there. This basically simply means that if you have historic societies that were involved in eventually or in developing the original ordinance, all it means is they have standing. So anyone can participate in front of the city council or in front of the BAR. The question is, who would have standing to appeal that decision to the circuit court? Now, what the decision is, what the merits are, I have no idea. But this would simply say who would have standing to appeal to the circuit court.
So, Mr. Chair, one follow-up.
I wish that Alexandria Historic Society was on the line, because this is basically their legislation.
Well, no, thank you, Mr. Chair. One follow-up is, where is that described in the bill that specifies a historic society or otherwise? What are the defining terms of limitations or expansion or narrowness, et cetera, of what you just described in the bill?
Okay, it says who provided public input under subsection C. If you flip to subsection C, it then talks about any locality that establishes or expands a local historic district pursuant to this section shall identify and inventory all landmarks, buildings, or structures in the areas being considered for inclusion within the proposed district. And then it talks about the process. So if you were a part of that process, if your organization participated in that process, you then would have standing if somebody was to, manipulate or change or effectively allow a building to be renovated or modernized. You would have standing to challenge that. This is going to be a pretty narrow class. That's the point.
All right, anybody else for Senator Peterson? And again, we've asked for public comment. There's been none. The bill's in front of us.
Mr. Chairman, move report.
It's been moved.
Second.
And seconded. That Senate Bill 206 be reported. The clerk will open the roll. Debate on the uncontested docket.
All righty.
Ayes 15, no zero.
Bill reports.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to move to strike Senate Bill 218.
All right. Senator Pike moves. It's been seconded that Senate Bill 218 be stricken from the docket. Open her up. And I think
Ayes 15, no zero.
Thank you. And I believe we already voted on Senator Servell's 251 going by for the week. Is that correct? Okay. The only other bill on our docket for today is Senator Vogel's 319, and that bill, I just got a request to have it stricken. To have it stricken? It was going to go by for the term, but anyway. It's been requested by Senator Vogel that Senate Bill 319 be stricken. Moved and seconded. All in favor? Got to vote on that one. All right, I believe that
Ayes
completes.
15, no zero.
I'm sorry, I believe that completes our docket for the day, and we'll do all the charters next Monday. Adjourned.